They say middle children learn to be quiet to survive. I became silent to disappear. In the Morgan family, Ethan was the son, and we were the furniture revolving around him, expected to clap, smile, and stay out of the light. I was 11 when I won the regional science fair with a renewable energy prototype. My mother arrived late wearing heels too high and apologies too light. Sweetie, we're so proud, but Ethan just got nominated for state honors in debate. Isn't that incredible? I remember clutching my blue ribbon, nodding like it didn't matter. By the time I was 17, I'd learned the art of invisibility. I slipped in and out of rooms unnoticed, did my own laundry, filed my own college applications, and never caused a scene. Ethan, on the other hand, was an event. Every achievement was a headline at the dinner table. When he got his first startup internship, my parents celebrated like he'd cured cancer. I quietly taught myself to code using borrowed library books and a glitchy school laptop. No one asked what I was working on. No one cared. The final blow came on Thanksgiving night during my senior year of college. After dinner, I was alone in the kitchen loading the dishwasher when Ethan strolled in sipping Dad's good bourbon like he owned the place. "Claire," he said with that effortless smirk, "you're good at what you do, but let's be real. You're not cut out for wealth. You think too small. You're too soft." He meant it as a kindness, the way men do when they expect you to be grateful for their condescension. I said nothing. I just kept stacking plates, but inside, I made a vow. I wouldn't fight for their attention. I wouldn't try to be seen. I would build something so undeniable, so brilliantly mine, that the next time they looked for me, they'd have to look up. Not because I needed them to see me, because I needed to see what I was capable of when I stopped waiting for permission. And that night, I stopped waiting. My apartment was barely bigger than a closet peeling linoleum, secondhand furniture, and a window that faced a brick wall. But it had a lock, a decent Wi-Fi signal, and no one to interrupt me. That was all I needed to build. While Ethan updated LinkedIn about golf meetings and pitch decks, I cold emailed small businesses offering custom backend systems and automation tools. Most ignored me. A few didn't. Those few paid enough for rent and 2 weeks of ramen. I kept my voice light in the family group chat. "Yeah, just freelancing," I'd say. Nothing serious. When I visited home, I let them believe I was drifting. It was easier than explaining version control systems to my father, or why 2 CEOs had extended long-term contracts to someone they still pictured as the girl who fixed their Wi-Fi. At night, the silence was heavy. I ate dinner alone, usually cold noodles out of a chipped bowl, staring at code until the letters blurred. There were no celebratory toasts, no family dinners in my honor, just the quiet clack of keys and the weight of something bigger than pride focus. I kept my receipts organized in a shoebox. I hand-built my website. I rewrote every contract 5 times until I understood what I was signing. Every mistake was mine, every win too. No one gave me a blueprint. No one even knew I was building. The emotional toll came in small cracks. One night after another 7-day sprint with barely 4 hours of sleep, I made the mistake of going to a family dinner. It was Ethan's birthday. My mother hired a private chef and arranged calligraphy place cards for each guest. Mine said Claire, web stuff. The phrase sank like a stone in my stomach. During dessert, Ethan announced he'd be launching his own fintech app. My parents beamed. "This one's going to put him on the map," my father said proudly. No one asked what I was working on. Afterwards, I sat in my car for a long time. The street lamp flickered above, painting shadows across the dashboard. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, holding my breath against the burn rising in my throat. I wasn't angry. I was exhausted. I was tired of being unseen, tired of pretending it didn't matter. But that night, I didn't break. I turned the key, drove back to my tiny apartment, and opened my laptop. I had 2 client proposals due by morning. And code didn't care about place cards. Success wasn't going to be a moment. It wasn't going to come with applause or headlines or champagne. It was going to come one line, one late night, one ignored family dinner at a time. So I kept going. Quietly, deliberately, unseen, but unstoppable. The licensing deal came at 2:07 a.m. via email. Subject line Sentinel Security Licensing Inquiry. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I saw the name James Conrad, CTO of Sentinel Cyber Group, a juggernaut in predictive threat modeling. They'd somehow gotten their hands on the white paper I'd presented under a pseudonym at DevCon East. The presentation had 30 viewers in person, maybe 100 online. Apparently, one of them mattered. I stared at the screen, rereading the message 5 times. They wanted to discuss licensing my predictive intrusion system. A 6-figure offer for a non-exclusive 1-year term. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just blinked, leaned back, and whispered, "Okay, let's begin." A week later, the paperwork was signed. Money hit my account 2 days after that. For the first time in years, I ate something that wasn't instant noodles. The news traveled fast in certain circles. Not the ones my family read, but the ones that mattered to people who build quietly. One of them was Marcus Reed, a name I'd only ever seen on dusty cybersecurity textbooks, and now forgotten TED Talks. He emailed me a single-line lunch, "I want to know how your mind works." We met in a corner booth of a cafe in downtown Oakland. He wore reading glasses and a threadbare hoodie that made him look more like a retired librarian than one of tech's forgotten titans. After my 3rd sentence, he interrupted me. "You remind me of who I was before the world noticed," he said. "I want in. I'll take equity over salary. You need someone who's made the mistakes already." I shook his hand that day. It changed everything. Julian Reyes arrived next, an analyst who'd been quietly tracking my filings, tracing shell companies, and connecting the dots. He requested a meeting under the pretense of investment research. I expected a probe. What I got was curiosity, intelligence, and surprisingly, humility. "You've built something remarkable," he said, "and hidden it even better." He didn't ask for a job. He asked for dinner. Julian became my sounding board, then my anchor, eventually my partner. And in those early days, as we worked late in borrowed office space, with mismatched chairs and flickering lights, I felt it not success, but formation. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were starting to shape the future, and still, no one had said my name. Success, when done right, doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silent signatures and strategy. After Sentinel's deal, I doubled down. I used the earnings to quietly acquire a floundering threat detection startup based in Portland. Their code was messy, but their patents were gold. Through a shell company registered in Delaware, I bought them for half of what their investors had sunk into them. They never knew the buyer's name. 3 months later, I acquired a data mining firm in Reno and merged their back-end tools with mine. Another shell, another clean transaction. Another win buried in legal language and nondescript email addresses. Ethan's name popped up on my radar again through Marcus. "Your brother's company just pitched at a closed demo day," he said one morning, sipping his usual black coffee. "Bad tech. Flashy deck. Investors loved it." I shrugged. Let them waste their money. Marcus didn't smile. "You might want to look closer." So I did. His startup, AltoWorks, had pivoted 3 times in 12 months, burned through 2 rounds of funding, and quietly started borrowing from vendors. Their platform looked good, but under the surface it was brittle. Leaky APIs, sloppy endpoints, a hacker's dream. It was also under pressure from 3 of the companies I now owned. One of AltoWorks' early silent partners had sold their equity in desperation, unaware it had been swept up in my latest acquisition trail. By the time my legal team stitched everything together, the math was irrefutable. I owned 51% of Ethan's company. I sat with that knowledge for a long time, fingers steepled under my chin, staring out the window of our modest office. The irony was sharp, almost comical. He still strutted on LinkedIn, still posted about disrupting the industry like he was building Tesla 2.0. And all the while, the the floor beneath him belonged to me. Julian read the finalized ownership documents and whistled. Does he know? No, I said, and he won't. Not yet. Marcus, leaning in the doorway, watched me carefully. You're playing a long game. I'm building a fortress, I replied. He nodded, then added, just remember at some point you'll have to step into the light. When you do control the moment, don't let the moment control you. I filed that away. For now, the shadows still served me. They gave me cover to consolidate, to prepare to choose when and where the truth would land. But even I knew the day was coming. Not because I craved attention, because I craved accuracy. And there's nothing more powerful than being seen on your own terms. The envelope arrived by courier, thick cream cardstock, gold embossed lettering, and the kind of weight that tried too hard to feel important. Mr. and Mrs. Richard Morgan request the honor of your presence at the engagement celebration of their son, Ethan Morgan, to Danielle Hawthorne, at the bottom in Ethan's looping scrawl, formal attire. Wealth welcome. I stared at those two words. Wealth welcome for a long time, as if wealth were a guest, or worse, a ticket to be validated at the door. It didn't surprise me, but it still landed like a slap performative shallow, exactly the image Ethan had curated his whole life. Julian was on the couch scanning quarterly reports when I dropped the invitation beside him. He read it once, eyebrows arching slightly. He's really leaning into the Bond villain phase. I didn't laugh. It's just so on brand. You going? He asked gently. I don't know, I said. I've worked so hard to build everything out of sight, quietly, without theatrics. Walking into that room feels like an announcement I never asked to make. Julian set his papers down. Claire, this isn't revenge. It's a mirror. You're not crashing anything, you're just showing up with the truth. Whether they can handle it or not is their problem. I hesitated. What if I'm not ready to be seen like that? Then wait, he said simply. But don't stay hidden because they once made you feel small. You outgrew their version of you a long time ago. That night I stood in front of my closet, looking at clothes that had always helped me blend in. Neutrals, flats, practical coats. All armor for a woman who wasn't ready to be noticed. But I was ready now. The next day I walked into a high-end boutique downtown. The kind where the sales associates wore earpieces and whispered into tablets. I told the stylist I needed a dress that didn't scream but made it impossible to look away. She brought out a floor-length navy gown with a deep back and precise tailoring. No sequins, no embellishments, just elegance cut like a secret. It fit like it had been waiting for me. 2 days later, I traded in my sensible sedan for a limited edition convertible in obsidian black. Cherry leather seats, clean chrome trim, power that whispered. When the dealer asked if I wanted a vanity plate, I shook my head. The car didn't need to say anything, neither did I. They'd hear it when I arrived. The ballroom at the Marlowe Hotel was all glass and gold. A string quartet played near the fireplace, and the floral arrangements looked like they'd been airlifted in from Versailles. I recognized distant relatives, high school classmates, and people who had once asked, "So what is it you do again?" as if the question itself wasn't rhetorical. Julian's hand brushed mine as we stepped inside. "Still want to leave quietly?" he asked. I gave a small smile. That option expired when I put on this dress. Ethan spotted us within minutes. He wore a tux 2 sizes too tight around his ego and a grin that had been charming when we were kids, but now looked desperate. He wove through the crowd, fiancé in tow. "Claire," he said, his voice thick with condescension. "You clean up well. This your +1?" "This is Julian," I replied. "My partner, financial and otherwise." Ethan's gaze flicked to Julian, appraising and instantly dismissing him. "Nice. Glad to see you getting out more," he chuckled. "Hey, you brought champagne, right? This is the good stuff. $1,200 a bottle. Some of us can afford it." He winked and walked away, leaving the bitter trace of performance in his wake. At 7:00 p.m., Sharp, he took the stage. Microphone in hand, Danielle at his side. Her posture was elegant, her smile brittle. Friends, family, Ethan began tonight as about love and success. He launched into a speech that sounded like it had been written by ChatGPT on a cocktail of ego and champagne. Success, he said, pacing slightly, isn't accidental. Some of us are wired for it. We build, we rise, we win. Others, well, they stay average. His eyes landed on me for a half second too long. Laughter rippled across the room, awkward, polite, some forced. I felt Julian stiffen beside me. I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into my clutch and pulled out the velvet box. I walked toward the stage, the chatter dipped curiosity replacing champagne. Ethan paused mid-sentence as I approached. Something to add, Claire? Actually, yes. I smiled, holding out the box. A little something for the groom. Laughter scattered through the room until he opened it. Inside was a single document, the signed merger agreement. The cover page alone was enough. Beneath it, a folded note. Ethan frowned, then read. His expression melted from smugness to confusion, then disbelief. What is this proof? I said calmly. That I own the majority stake in Alto Works. His lips parted. You're joking. Check the signatures. He flipped to the last page. The color drained from his face. He looked up, blinking. How I've been buying your company for a year, Ethan. Quietly, legally, thoroughly. The room froze. You now work for your little sister, I added. Gasps. Real ones this time. And then from the corner, a burst of laughter. It was Danielle, not cruel, not shocked. Just a single crystalline laugh, like something finally made sense. Ethan turned to her, stricken. She didn't look back. And then Marcus appeared calm and confident in a suit that didn't try too hard. Evening, he said casually. In case anyone was wondering, yes, it's real. I helped her build it. Phones were already out. Whispers turned to buzz. My mother looked ready to faint. My father looked like someone had finally unplugged the illusion. I stepped down from the stage, Julian at my side, and passed Danielle on the way. She met my eyes. Nicely done, she said under her breath. I nodded once. He never saw me coming. No, she said. But I did. Danielle slipped the ring off her finger without ceremony. A quiet, metallic clink echoed as she set it on the edge of a half-full champagne flute. No drama, no scene, just one clean, deliberate act. She looked at Ethan not with rage, but with quiet clarity. I deserve better, she said, calm and firm. Then she turned and walked out of the ballroom without waiting for a response. Ethan didn't follow. Around us, the energy shifted. The laughter had died, the music never resumed. It was as if everyone had just realized they were standing inside someone else's unraveling. A few guests murmured polite goodbyes, awkwardly gathering coats and clutching their phones, already typing versions of the same story, Golden Boy humbled. Engagement ruined. The sister no one saw coming. My mother found me by the window. Her lipstick had faded. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached out. Claire, she whispered, like saying my name was suddenly unfamiliar. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at her. Really looked. For years I'd craved this moment, this question, this awareness. But now that it was here, it didn't feel like triumph. It just felt overdue. You were never listening, I said quietly. Behind her, my father stood still, his arms folded like a man preparing for a storm. He said nothing, but his silence had shifted from dismissal to discomfort, maybe even recognition. Then Ethan approached. His bow tie hung loose, the sharp edges of his persona unraveling. His voice was lower now, almost human. You win, he said hoarsely. Is that what you wanted? No, I replied. I never needed to win. I needed to build. He studied me, unsure of the script now. So what are you offering me, a job? Or just here to humiliate me? The pause was intentional. You're not the right fit for my company, Ethan. We don't build on ego. His face flickered, jaw tightening. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, not because I'd taken anything from him, but because the illusion had finally shattered. I turned away before he could say more. Julian was already waiting at the edge of the room. "You okay?" he asked softly. I looked back once more, my mother watching, my father quiet. Ethan still in the center of his wreckage. "I'm not the ghost anymore," I said. "I'm finally real to them." 6 months later, the ballroom looked different, not because of the chandeliers or the floral centerpieces, but because the spotlight was finally aimed where it belonged. The Morgan Initiative for Women in Tech had just launched its first mentorship cohort. 40 young women high school through college from across the state, some shy, some fierce, all brilliant. We offered them scholarships, internships, mentorships, and maybe most importantly, belief. I stood near the stage as the panel wrapped up, watching a girl in the front row scribble notes furiously. She couldn't have been more than 13. Her glasses kept sliding down her nose, and she pushed them back with the same frustrated determination I once had in science class. When the event ended, she came up to me, notebook in hand. "Ms. Morgan," she said, eyes wide, "how do you know if what you're building is worth it?" I smiled. "If you keep thinking about it when no one's watching, it's worth it. Build anyway." She nodded, then added, "My teacher says I talk too much about ideas that don't matter." "So did mine," I said gently. She was wrong, too. She beamed, tucked her notebook under her arm, and ran off to rejoin the others. I stood still for a moment, struck by the simple enormity of it, that maybe what I'd built wasn't just a company, it was a ripple. That night, back in my apartment, I pulled out an old photo Marcus had given me, 12-year-old Claire standing beside her science project, a lone ribbon in hand. I remembered how proud I felt in that moment, and how quickly that pride was crushed. I reached for a pen and began to write. "Dear younger me, you were always brilliant. They just weren't looking. Their blindness was not your burden. Your quiet was not your weakness. You didn't need to be louder, you just needed time. You built something they didn't see coming because they never looked past your silence. But you always saw yourself, with pride, your future self." I folded the letter and slid it behind the photo, not for validation, just for safekeeping.